Season 2, Episode 3, Past equals present times future over yesterday.
Welcome to Starting Now, a Barry podcast, presented by Cinemasins.
Hello, everybody. This is Starting Now, the Barry podcast. Here is Chris Atkinson, and over here is Barrett Scher.
Hello, that's a big mouthful of a title, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we have Mike Hester over here.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, that really is. I didn't know there's that X in there. I didn't know it was going to say times or X.
Yeah, could be present X future.
Present X future.
Might, All right, so where are we at in this episode? So the beginning of this starts off with a great little dream sequence.
Yes. And we get a chunk of knowledge that I don't think we've gotten before, have we? It shows North Hollywood Hank as his little title
thing.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew where the NoHo came from
either.
Before then.
Especially since that's so, when you think of NoHo and Soho, it's so related to New York.
Yeah.
That, and I never thought of that either. So
I thought it was a New York thing because it's Houston Street. It's not Houston,
it's
right?
Houston.
That's Houston, yeah.
But yeah, so he's having this dream about being on a panel with Thomas Friedman.
Yeah.
and Thomas Friedman is saying stuff about the markets are gonna, you're not gonna have autonomy. You're gonna have to let Asia into this market and so on and so forth. And NoHo Hank is in his dream is really thinking about Esther during this whole time, and he's like saying that basically like, no, Asia will not be a part of this. I'm gonna put a big bullet. I'm gonna put a bullet in her big head and everything, and basically then starts insulting Thomas Friedman, who at first I thought was the actual Thomas Friedman, but it's an actor that's playing him. But basically just saying, he's like, you are stupid. No, why would anybody listen to what you write? You're the dumbest writer in the world.
I know it's dream logic, but is he dumb enough to think that he's like going to have a significant dent in Asia if he actually takes out Esther? We're going to stop the rise of the Asian mob or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it is dream logic ultimately. But that is a great way to start this off. And we see that he's dreaming and he's got the Thomas Friedman book resting on his chest and everything. And he's getting the news. He's getting the news that he's really hoping to hear, that Esther is dead.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get that news.
She's pissed.
And he comes in such a way, I think she knows that he's the one, right?
She's got to, or at least Cristobal doesn't let on that he knows.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got so much specificity. Like, oh well, because they're like some white boy showed up and whatever, and he's like, oh, he obviously didn't kill you in the monastery, in the place that he was supposed to.
Or her, it could have been
or
her.
Yeah, and or it could have been a bunch of drones. I don't know.
But as he's saying these things, you see the I forget exactly what he says that's kind of gives it away a bit, and you get this look of recognition from Cristobal, like that's not what a normal person would say. They get it, and they just suspect him, and I think after his really weird acting, they suspect him even more when he's done, and then they get their new digs and the
immediate consequence though of Barry not killing Esther in that last episode though is that now her entire gang needs a place to stay, and they have basically pushed all the Chechens out into this like storage shed.
Yeah,
that's part of their punishment.
Yeah, and so they're in the store. They're about to go into the storage shed, and NoHo Hank's like, you have to kill Barry.
And this is all pre-credits.
This is pre-credits. This is a we talked about how weird this was that Barry didn't go through with the killing in that last one. They're systematically erasing that even it happened, which kind of steps on that great thing that we loved about NoHo Hank being serious in that first episode, and they're just kind of erasing that it even happened. And that's one of the part of the disappointment. I have a little bit of disappointment about that because they, instead of just going through all of this, they could have gone straight to him training NoHo Hank's guys.
Yeah.
But it does take us away. It would take away some of the fun stuff that does happen because of it. I'm wondering if there was something they really wanted to do in these first 3 episodes that made that choice for him not to kill Esther important to the plot, because really, honestly, he could have just said, "Hey, I'll just train your guys and they can kill him."
I don't think it occurred to either of them. I think what the show is trying to say, because I agree with you, but I think what the show is trying to say is that because he made that choice, he has to find some way to make this right again, which is a common thing, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's another kill or like another thing that he has to do to compensate for it. And it takes, them trying to kill him, which is a hilarious sequence. Mm-hmm. It takes them for him to even just be like, to see, first of all, the incompetence of the Chechens.
Yeah.
And then for him to say, you know what? Okay. To have that idea occur to him.
But he already knows that they're incompetent, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
He already knows. He knows from the first episode that they're incompetent, that they keep trying to get people to come over from Chechnya that are terrible. So they don't. I'm not saying that this ruins the show for me. I'm just saying that it felt like something that there was an idea early on in the writing stage that they said, okay, NoHo Hank's going to mean business and he's going to kill Barry if he doesn't do this.
I think that just kind of the whole season 2, I think season 1 was so tight. There were a few places where I thought maybe they could have done this differently or whatever, but there really wasn't much. Mm-hmm. Season 2, there are a few instances where I think, like what you're saying, why did they have to do this? It kind of, the idea goes away in this episode where Hank told the Chechens that Esther killed
Goron.
Esther killed Goron, and then so Barry needs to take her out, and then she doesn't, and then we don't really hear about that again. I guess we kind of do in the 8th episode, but that's a ways down.
Yeah. They're sort of making this season. They're sort of making this season where there's a short amount of time really that's going on, because the Chechens are apparently coming over on a plane, and they don't get there until the 8th episode. So maybe this is supposed to be a condensed, like a week or something.
Yeah, I think it has.
I think it's kind of like that. So.
But anyway, that's neither here nor there. We do get a lot of great stuff from the fact that this is the way that it's gone and everything. I just wanted to point that out that. It is kind of weird that we had this moment and now it means nothing really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We go now to Barry trying to perform his new scene. He wants to do a part where he saved a life, but then again, there's another ugly truth to this. We're not going to get to this yet, but he's like, okay, this is another part in war where I saved a life or whatever. Uh-huh. The very first one though is him, doing that first one and saying it's the best day of my life and just go, and then you see him delete.
He knows that'd go over terrible with the acting group. So, and I really enjoyed the way that these sequences and how each time you see it, it adds something more, and you see the dramatic. He's trying to make it dramatic. He's trying to tell the truth, and that informs the entire episode because there's an audience. Mm-hmm. He needs to entertain, but if he tells the truth, they're going to flip out, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he is trying to work through that the entire time. And meanwhile, Sally is also trying to work through hers as well. I think I really like that the episode is going through with that, and you get into the inner side of both of these characters.
There is obviously people who are telling a truth, but not the whole truth of their whole story. And Sally has this one that she's talking about with her abusive husband. Mm-hmm. And she says, and before we even get more information later, the way that she says it comes off phony.
Yeah.
It comes off phony immediately because she says something, you think you could choke me? Well, choke on this. I'm leaving you and all that. And you can tell that there's something about it that's false in her performance. But she believes this is how she left him, is that she told him, and that's the noble and dignified way to do it. she doesn't seem to think that just leaving is the brave part.
Yeah, exactly. And she believes this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it's a half-truth intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost, it's like the Seinfeld quote, like that George tells Jerry. He's like, it's not a lie if you believe it.
yeah.
And it's the same thing because she has to get talked out of this, essentially, to realize that this isn't how it went down.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting that because she's so self-absorbed that you could see her just making this up to where she looks like the good guy or the badass or whatever. But she literally believes this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It really speaks to the power of self-deception for all of us, and certainly her as well. And Barry has that too. Maybe with him, it's more of putting it out of his head and not looking.
Yeah,
back
it's the
at
other
these.
side of that coin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The scenes where Barry, we don't know what Barry's struggling with yet. We'll know. We think that it's something about he saved this guy, but we don't know what happened. The entire story of that. That's his next thing that he's going to try to do. But he doesn't have much beyond that. That's the problem with his story. He does. But it's not.
Yeah.
It's again. He's in a bad spot with it because while one thing is true, there is another thing that's even worse that's true that's happening.
Don't they don't they call him out in his dream sequence? Like the guy who's got shot gets up and he's like, no, that's not how it happened, or something. Well,
there's only one time that I remember that actually happening, and that's when he does the Braveheart thing.
Oh yeah,
that was a little bit later.
So Sally and Barry are both doing this, not all the way 100% true thing. And what it reminded me of was Annie Hall.
Yeah.
In Annie Hall, there's the scene where he goes to California. He meets up with Annie, and Annie basically he asks her to marry him, and she's like, "No, I like being out here in California. I like us being friends and all that." And when the next scene happens, he's getting a play done of this scene where it's the guy is saying, well, I guess this is the way it ends, huh?
Yeah.
In a health food place in California, blah, blah, blah. And he turns to the camera. He's like, hey, it's my first play. What do you He's like, I think it's really hard to get things in real life right. So that's why we try to do it in art the right way. We want it the way we want it.
Exactly right. And that's what Sally has been doing in her own head, has been telling her the story of that's right. And so much of the reason why we watch movies and watch TV shows, especially when there's a hero, is you want to see somebody do it the right way. We all want to be the super attractive, quick-witted person who makes all the right moves, and on the rare occasion you make the wrong move, you learn something from it and come out even stronger. And that's what we want, and we don't. None of us do that. We all screw it up. We all look back and think, oh, I could have done that better. And then that's entertaining to see that, and that's the theme throughout this episode and this entire season.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, there are two things that happen. So you have the Chechens, you have NoHo Hank, and this other guy trying to kill Barry. We don't know that quite yet. We just know that we hear some whizzing sounds.
So great.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
Even on the rewatch, I was like, what is it? Oh, that's
yeah.
right.
That's right.
And then he looks at the wall and just sees two little holes. And then he sees a third hole, and he's like, "Okay, all right." And then he, goes down and gets his gun from his, his bed arsenal, and he sees NoHo Hank and this guy arguing, like, he's like, "I don't know how to shoot a gun."
He's the guy that's sent to assassinate this guy.
Yeah.
He's so far off too. Those bullet holes are
another way
at
up,
the top of the fucking wall.
And Barry gets on the roof, and he's pissed off, and he's ready to kill him, but he's got that really honest, he doesn't want to kill anybody thing in him right now.
He's still taking that starting now thing seriously. He hasn't killed anybody.
He hasn't killed anybody.
Right.
And Hank has another genuine moment where he's like, all right, just do it. My life is worth shit right now anyway. He comes back to regular NoHo Hank afterwards. So he's like, "Oh my god!"
That was the best, because Barry is got the gun trained on him. He's got all the anger is there, and he's like, that it's that usual thing that we see in movies when somebody doesn't pull the trigger. They're like, "Fuck!" and all that. And then NoHo Hank's like, oh my God, that was so scary. That was so scary. And the idea is pitched that. It's like first off he says I can't do this, and NoHo Hank's like, do you know any other assassins? And he's like, well, no. And he's like, but I can maybe train your guys. But that dude, like that line though, where he's like, sometimes the simplest shit is the funniest. And apparently this was all improvised too.
Yes.
Oh, really?
When he goes, why can't you get your guys to do it? NoHo Hank is like, he's like, oh, you see my guys, man, they suck balls or whatever. and then the other guy on top of that improv goes, he's like, if we suck balls, you're king of Suck Balls Mountain.
Yeah, that's the best. It's
That's
hilarious.
It's all
That's
improv.
awesome.
And they're laughing. They're like Bill Hader and Alec Berg are laughing off screen. They had to do ADR for that.
Oh, yeah.
They said that scene, because Hank is going and talking all this, that they ruined like every shot.
Yeah,
They just kept laughing the whole time.
Yeah,
So.
that's the thing. That line is in no way witty or anything, but it is hilarious. It's one of the funniest things that could. I think it's because it's within character, and it is so like I don't know what is it about it. Sometimes it's the simplest thing.
Oh, yeah.
So it's decided he's going to train their guys. But meanwhile, there's also Sally who's talking to her friend on Skype, and she really wants to have validation of this story that she's telling, that she told Sam, you want to choke on something, choke on this, blah, blah, blah. And all her friend remembers is that he was passed out and she left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is most likely more of what actually happened.
Probably did. But you know how people try to convince that it's not their place to say.
Yeah.
And someone who experienced it goes, well, no, I said this and that and whatever. And she's like, I don't remember that. It was a long time ago though.
Yeah.
And and you can tell she doesn't believe it, but you don't. It's not in your place.
And she wasn't there for the whole thing.
Yeah.
Things happened that she didn't see, so she can't really say.
Mm-hmm.
But she doesn't confirm the story either, which is a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, right before that, she's like, because she asks if she saw one of the pilots.
That's at the end of that conversation, because she goes, we shouldn't talk about that. Let's talk about other things. I saw that show with you or whatever. And then she goes, did you see the one that was called, was it Pompey's
Burning?
Pompey's Burning.
And she goes, no, I didn't see that. I don't really have time. I have the kids, but the only thing I really watch is like Desperate Housewives and Keeping Up with the Kardashians and The Voice
Grey's Anatomy.
Grey's Anatomy. Just a million different things that she
all
rattles
of the Law and Orders or something like that.
And that's
which is totally real.
that is such a true moment. Yeah, how many times have you run into people who say they just don't have time for this and that, and then as you talk to them more and more, you're like, damn, you definitely have time.
Yeah.
You just haven't gotten the
It's people that are like, I love Cinemasins.
Yeah.
I don't really watch the videos. I do have 2 hours to listen to a podcast.
Right.
But I don't
It's hilarious.
And it's totally fine. You can totally just say, I didn't see that. I haven't gotten the chance or whatever.
Yeah.
And, or I just haven't had the motivation to watch it or whatever.
Yeah.
Unless it was something like super big, then, what's the point?
Exactly.
We have Gene and his son, Leo.
Yeah.
Now, Gene's an interesting part of this triumvirate that's trying to get things right about their lives, because he's the abuser here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
or the deserter by default is
right. He does say, and I believe it's the next episode, that he was cruel and he was I don't know if he said abusive. He may have said abusive, not like physically abusive, but he does say he was cruel and he was cold or something like that to his son. So it's an interesting thing because he's not. Yeah, I mean, I guess Barry's the same. Barry's got the same sort of deal, though. I mean, he was the one in the wrong.
Yeah,
right,
and everything. He is definitely changed person, and he wants to have a relationship with his son.
Yeah, he's trying to have this relationship. He really doesn't know how to go about it. Like, He takes them and he gives them this key. He thinks that this is going to work. It's the key where his girlfriend was murdered, and it comes out that he wants his son to like keep up with it, and like do some gardening. So like that's not a
assistant
gift.
to the owner.
That's a new chore, and that's nothing that he wants to do at all. But at least he made the effort. He's trying, but Gene is really self-absorbed, right? And he doesn't know how to. He's the center of attention at the theater. He's used to being the one that everybody wants to impress, and in this case, he doesn't have that power, and he doesn't know how to do it.
His moves worked on Janice too, so he thinks, I can convince him. It's at this part in the season that I was really questioning the necessity of this character, of his son. And I still have some questions, having finished up this season. But I think it's a long con. Basically, I think it's going to pay off quite a bit at some point during the run of the series, assuming that it keeps going.
It pays off for me. It pays off quite a bit, in that he has something he's done in the past that is wrong and guilty, and Barry also has the same thing, and they do bond over that. That was enough for me. Because I was really doubting the son when he first came in. I thought, oh no. Are we going deep into like Gene and all this stuff? And no, it serves the story well. And I think it does fit Gene's character enough that it wasn't too big of a leap.
Yeah, I agree.
And we have Loach with Fuches at the quinceanera store.
Yeah.
And this long abandoned quinceanera store. He's telling him, I need you to get him in front of him and just basically say, I know you killed Moss, and then have him say whatever. And so like there's this kind of this really funny he's like, I know you killed Moss, and he's like fuck you, I didn't get this. This is Loach playing Barry. Fuck you, I didn't do that. And he's like, yeah you did. How do you know? Because I was there. He's like, you were there. Wouldn't you know that he wasn't? He's basically just trying to continue this whole thing where he's trying to get Barry on tape, saying that he killed Moss, or at least killed somebody out of this whole thing. And that's a short scene, but it is funny. What is it that as is like, oh, quinceaneras, they're really big around here. It's like they're like the girl bar mitzvahs, and there's like that long pause on him, like he's really happy with himself.
He has that big smile.
And so then now we get back to Barry training the Chechens.
Yep.
And again, there's so many genius parts of these things. It's obvious NoHo Hank wants to be as professional as possible, so he brings a translator to this thing. And so it's like, all right, introducing your teacher, Barry, and everything. And so the guy speaks in Chechen and everything, and it's like, all right. And then Barry goes, does anybody have any questions? And then the Chechen guy, do you have any questions in Chechen? And so everybody was like, yeah. Are you the best assassin in America or whatever? And Barry's like, no, I'm not. And then the Chechen guy says something. Then another guy asks another question in English, and then Barry's like, the guy goes, are we going to be using guns today? And Barry's like, yes.
Yeah.
And he goes like, do all of you speak English? And like they all raise their hands, and like, this is what we even need the translator for.
No, Hank is in his beret. It's a great scene.
Oh yeah.
No, Hank just isn't great at organizing or doing this job at all. Doesn't he know he doesn't need a translator? Hasn't he dealt with all of these guys so many times?
I don't know. I feel like, to me, in NoHo Hank's head, it's what a professional would do. It's, we're a bunch of Chechens. There might be some things that we don't understand. So let's have somebody out there to do it. He knows everybody speaks English, but it's something that's a nice touch, right? To have an interpreter, you know. But they start off, and they're all just shooting at melons and bottles and stuff like that. Nobody's really good, except for one guy. One guy seems to be able to hit a couple of things, and he's a somewhat important. I don't know if he's important. But he's a somewhat important thread in this season.
He is, and they really make sure that you know that he's important in some way.
Yeah.
He's important to a point, and I like how his arc goes all the way through.
Me too. This is a fantastic genius thing that they do in this, is that this is a guy and he makes as much impact to the show as he needs to.
Yep. Yeah.
There's
like Taylor, right?
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't need to be a big, featured character or anything. It's just his little arc is somewhat important, and that's all we don't know that yet, though. While this, go ahead.
I love the look. What all of the other Chechens are doing, they just pick up the gun and just start firing.
Yeah.
Boom, boom. And then you get several different times they cut back to Meyerbeck, and he has this rifle, and he's like looking at it and like examining it and exploring it, and then he picks it up very carefully and fires and hits it right away. It's well done. And you see, like, okay, this guy has it. He's competent. Maybe this isn't a skill that can be taught, Barry, but this guy has it.
Yeah.
And right away. So.
Oh, yeah. And Barry is talking to NoHo Hank, and Hank is like, so how long do you think this will take? Maybe 2-3 hours to get to make this guy into a whole army? And he's like, you guys, the skill set sucks, man. There's not, I don't know how long this is going to take. He gets a text message during this from Sasha, who's like, I'm sick, I can't work at Lululemon. And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then, yes, classic iPhone usage. She goes immediately to text somebody else, but she's texting Barry. Jarhead's going to take over for me.
So Hollywood, Jarhead's going to take over.
Yeah. So he has to work at the Lululemon, I guess, the next day, or I don't know.
That night.
I think it was that night.
Yeah.
And that's when Fuches shows up, and Fuches is ready to do that whole, that whole nonsense. But Barry's so glad to see him.
Yeah.
He even starts as like, you listen here, motherfucker. He's like,
Which is, by the way, I believe it was at the end of this episode when Hader and Berg are talking. This is the first time I actually heard someone come out and say what Fuches is to Barry.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he actually says it's both.
Oh, okay.
That he loves Barry, but he's also using him.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why we both had that interpretation. We have the two different interpretations of what's going on. And I totally agree with that.
And in this scene, you really do see the affection, because Barry misses him. Misses him a lot, and when Fuches realizes that, he responds quickly and just doesn't care at all about the wire that's on him anymore. And they start talking. He's talking about the scene that he's going to do, and I love Fuches in this. I love Fuches because he just tells him, like, you can't say that. You can't say that in front of people. That's not what people want to hear. They want to be entertained, like Braveheart.
Yeah.
Which later on is funny.
Yeah.
And Barry doesn't quite get that message. He takes it very literally.
Yeah. As well as he does with all of his acting.
Yes.
I mean, everything. And this is going to be important for a later thing too. This is getting a little bit deeper into why he's in the position he's in. We get even more description of this in the next episode, but we know that the scene that he's talking about will later be the scene that ends up getting him disbanded. He'll be going out of the army after this. And Fuches says you can't tell that story because, like, once you get to the saving part, there's nothing but bad after that.
Yeah.
And it gets to a bad point. You can't tell that. And I like the sort of the tossed off, like, the thing about that Braveheart speech is that, you got to make it look like he died for something, I guess, or whatever. Yeah. And that's not what real life is like.
Yeah, exactly.
You
know, and you dramatize for the movies.
The next time we see Barry, he's doing this scene where he's saving the guy, but then instead of like whatever happens after, he goes full on Braveheart speech.
Yeah. not even a derivative, the exact
speech.
Dialogue.
And man, I tell you what, this is where Henry Winkler and Gene Cousineau and all this just shines every time this stuff happens. There's always a way to relate it to him, right? He comes up there and he goes, that's Braveheart. And he goes, no, it's not. He's like, no, that's Braveheart because I chased that movie for years. And he's sitting there thinking about what character would Cousineau have played in Braveheart. What was going to try to play William Wallace?
I guess so.
And then he's like, you come out here and you come out here and you tell this, you do this speech and everything, and you directly rip off Mel Gibson, and I'm Jewish, Barry. What the fuck?
And then when does the guy stand up? Because he's been shot in the face, and you just start saying, that is Braveheart.
I believe it's when Winkler.
It's one of my favorite movies.
I believe it's when Cousineau says that's Braveheart, and then he denies it, and then everybody starts getting up during the middle of all this and like, oh yeah, it's Braveheart.
Yeah, that's right.
And but at first, I was like, okay, so is he imagining this? But it's really like actors who are on the stage. He's imagining as that, the guy he saved and the other people in the area and everything. What's also funny about that Braveheart thing is that not only is it the soldiers who are coming in to listen to him, it's also all the townspeople coming in.
Yeah.
He's sort of stuck in this whole like, I don't know how to do this. And Gene's just basically like, man, just do this other story. What's so wrong with that? This also leads into Sally, right? We get to Sally's part because he's like, I think Cousineau, after he, admonishes Barry for doing the Braveheart thing, he then says, Sally, are you done with yours?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And is Nick going to be your ex-boyfriend? And Nick
God.
comes out, again.
He is.
he's like,
no lines.
He's like, yes, I'm going to be, and then he goes, okay, Barry, you're going to play the ex-boyfriend, and you hear Nick in the background. I played straight for 22 years. Sally wants him to be the ex-boyfriend and say all these horrible things. Mm-hmm. And Barry, again, we're talking about the literal nature of his acting and how he needs to be real about everything.
Yeah.
When he calls her a whore, he thinks he really is calling her a whore.
You can see him kind of wince a little bit,
Yeah. When she wants him to choke her, he really thinks he's going to have to choke her.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe that there's anything called play acting or it didn't count or anything. Everything counts to him. And so they try to do this scene where she's, wants to get to her big moment, but he's like, the scene is basically she comes home and her boyfriend gets pissed off because she was dancing with some other guy. And he's like, I didn't like the way you looked out there. You look like a whore. And she's like, we're just friends and all that. It's that little round and round. And when it comes time for him to choke her, he just can't do it.
Yeah. What I love about this scene is the economy of space, because not only are they right up next to each other because he's got to go in and do the chokehold. She's grabbing his hands and trying to get around. But you see Cousineau right up next to her. Like he's really getting in here, trying to, because I think he can see that this is, and it ends up being like a hit, skit basically, right? Like this is really honest, great action. And he wants to be right up in there. And it really amazed me, like how they got everybody in the frame to where it felt very intimate in that moment.
I really felt Barry is resisting because he knows he is a violent person.
Yeah, if he lets go of that, then
and this plays a lot in this season where he is worried that he'd choke her for real, and because he knows he has that in him.
We've seen him choke somebody to death.
Yeah,
already.
we have seen him. Yeah, we've
Poor
seen
Paco.
him do plenty, and I just thought that was an interesting thing where he doesn't want that to come out. He doesn't want that to come out on stage, but that's exactly what he has to have on stage. And and then she tries to bully him to get that to come out, and he just has to leave. He just has to run and say, fuck you or whatever.
Well, she's saying some things that I'm wondering how much he's taking internally.
Yes, he's taking it internally.
She's saying, you go ahead and choke me, you fucking pussy.
Yeah.
It's like, go on, you're gonna have to choke me, and all that. And she's really just trying. And Cousineau's like sitting there like, this is your end, man. Do it, go for it. And he just can't.
Yep.
One thing I read on Reddit about this scene, and somebody put on saying, this is the exact same situation as we saw in season 1 at the party where she is talking to another guy and Barry gets jealous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the situation, it came up again. Just another point of how good the writing is on this show, to have that callback and to repeat this again, and it makes you re-examine that and see why. Now, she deservedly got upset about Barry's reaction, but is probably even more because she's been through this before and it was such a horrible thing for her in the past. So
no, that's an excellent point. I had forgotten that because we haven't seen. It's interesting the sort of degrees of how we rate characters and everything. Like, well, we've never seen Barry hit her, so therefore he's a better person than the other guy.
Yeah,
but
really, he's a worse person.
He's really a worse person.
She even says it. She's like, you could never do the things that Sam could do because you're not a violent person.
Yeah. So it's sort of one of those things where you do kind of forget that happened in that last season. But yeah, it's an excellent point. I totally agree with that. Like they've sort of forgotten. The characters have forgotten,
right?
Not the writers, but the characters have forgotten that even happened because that was a period of time in their relationship that things were not good for either of them, and they've sort of pushed it out and everything. This leads to the ending of the episode, which is they go out and are talking, and then Sam himself shows up.
Ends with the perfect shot of Bill Hader's face.
Yes.
You see everything. You see shock, and then you see absolute rage.
Yeah.
In there. It's brilliant.
I'm trying to think, because we've seen a lot of Barry rage moments in this show. Is that something that they've done several times, that turn like he does?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't remember seeing it that stylized.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, because you don't know who this guy is. He comes up, "Hey Sally," and then you're like, there's no way you figure that she left her life behind. She was from Missouri or something like that. And, this couldn't be this guy all the way from her hometown or whatever. And then when she says that, we're having the same realization as Barry does, because we all want to kill that guy, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's still intertwined with her own life in many ways, and she has totally tried to negate that partly by moving out to Hollywood and having this other life. So I think maybe at that moment, he's beginning to see more and more that what she's been saying isn't quite the truth.
Well, that
plays into the next episode.
Yeah, that'll be the next episode. And I don't know. It was weird too. It may have just taken me a couple of viewings when we realized that the one thing didn't happen. I was wondering if they were about to go there and say that none of that happened. But there are clues when you watch the episodes again. The friend does say there were welts on her neck and all that. So that definitely happened. The show is not saying that it didn't happen. It's not getting that way. But especially, and we'll get into this on the next episode, especially when the way the next episode starts, you're sitting there going, holy crap, did she lie about everything?
Yeah.
I
agree.
And so, that's how that ends. And yeah, you're right. That last shot is
that's great.
So good. And that does it for that episode.
This show has so many really great cliffhangers, mini cliffhangers, just like that. Yeah, it ends great, and that happens almost in every one of these, and it doesn't feel forced like some shows. It feels like, we have to have a cliffhanger, and then there's no payoff. No, there's a cliffhanger and there's a payoff in just about every one of these.
Yep,
So.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll do it for the episode 3, the season 2, episode 3 of the Starting Now Barry podcast. Where can people talk about this episode?
Go to the Twitter and type in @NowStarting, and you will pull up our account. You can interact with Mike Hester, and you can go to SoundCloud, comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know, your take on this episode, what you think about our take on this episode. Hit us up.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode. Chris Atkins and Barrett Scher and Mike Hester. We'll see you next time.